All right, everyone. Welcome back to another leadership series interview. Spent the last few weeks doing a lot of incredible things, meeting with a lot of leaders, and through a mutual networking arrangement that we were able to connect on, I had a short 30-minute cafecito with Marcus. If anybody knows what a short 30 minutes with Mel cafecito means, it means if I have the time, we're going to keep talking forever. And I thought I met my match when it came to conversations and stories. Well, at the 2.5 hour mark on a Sunday, I figured we'd call it quits. And then I said, oh my goodness, I need to get Marcus on my series so we can riff and do the same thing live, no prompting. The only questions is leadership lessons. So Marcus, awesome to have you on stage here with me. I know you kept trying to ask me, what are we going to talk about? And I was like, leadership lessons. All right.
That's
So
exactly it.
what I will say is, I didn't know what to name this session, and I was like, here's an incredible industry leader. He's got programs, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I've got programs. Here's an incredible executive coach. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm an executive coach. Here's a introspective, incredible person. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm introspective. I'm like, so I was like, okay, it's the Thunderdome. Let's get in here. Two men enter, one man leaves.
And I
So
accept it.
you did. And that would be something that I would do. Challenge accepted. Let's go. So I'm like, this guy has to be on with me. So, why don't you tell the universe, the small universe of folks that are joining us today, just a tiny bit about you, because we've got 58 minutes to fill. So give us your elevator pitch, what you do, and what you're passionate about.
Elevated pitch. Okay, that's an interesting thing. So let me share with you this much. I decided that I'm pretty much done with working as a leadership coach because there are thousands out there. So I found my true calling, which is taking high achievers and help them to transform into future defining leaders. Because what all my clients of 20 years have in common is this one single question: can this be it? Or is there more to my life? And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm giving them a resounding yes, there is more, and I can actually lead you to the more. So this is what I do. And who I am is I am an orchestrator of influence because I realized my biggest gift to this world is connecting people, bringing influential people together, and therefore, as Mel would say, get shit happen. So that's me in the short.
I love this. I love this because that's pretty much what you said, and we were going back and forth over the course of 2.5 hours, right? And you were giving examples, and we were riffing on stories and kind of where we are in our journey, right? And I was like, the universe connects people for a specific reason, and I was like, we're gonna keep tagging along with each other on a lot of different topics. And what I appreciated was that you were bringing an international aspect to this, right?
Mhm.
Having worked with so many different companies and teams and everything else, I bring an international aspect this way, right? I'm, U.S. based, and I've had to work. Let me rephrase that. Not had to work, right? I have the blessing to have worked with a lot of international teams and companies, but you're coming from the opposite side of things. Walk us through, when did you land here in the States? Walk us through that journey, just the last view of that.
It's interesting. Today is March 10, and exactly 6 months ago, I touched ground. It was actually September 8th. And when we came here, we did not plan to stay. We came here. And then sadly, my wife's health deteriorated.
Mm,
So I decided I believe it is best if we do stay because here she gets the care she needs and as well has family around. So that's when I decided to put everything in to be able to
right.
stay here because as you know I can work everywhere as I'm
Right.
remote.
Right.
But this was a very important step for me to say, you know what? We've been living in Switzerland for 17 years, and now it's my time to reciprocate.
Right. Right.
But 6 months
Wow.
ago,
So 6 months ago, and prayers to you and your wife, and I hope things will turn out to be as best as they can, because I know there's a lot of people out that are on the surface doing incredible things and look like they're on top of the world, but in the background are really fighting to stay, to hang on, and to help, and to
absolutely
do the
true.
thing that they don't want to expose out there. So thank you for sharing that, because a
Yeah,
lot of people wouldn't. They wouldn't have the vulnerability or openness to do that.
yeah.
It's also probably one of the reasons why I knew you needed to be on here, because I knew you would be open with any conversation that we had. So I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
I am very careful in terms of sharing more about the situation, which you totally understand because
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
privacy and confidentiality. But I just
absolutely.
realized, Mel, that being called the authenticity alchemist comes with a kind of a burden.
Yeah,
So if not
yeah.
me being authentic about what I do, what I go through, what good would I be for, right?
Amen. Amen. So I will say, right now, I feel like the universe is a better place for you to be here and be able to share that. And you're setting an example, one of the first best examples of a leader, right? To be able to be
Appreciate
vulnerable
that.
and open enough to showcase the real why and the other reasons why you're setting ground and kind of making a commitment. So thank you for that. Um, I will also say you've got stories, and I know you've got stories, and I know we didn't cover them all. I talk to a lot of people offline, and then I bring them on here, and I talk about the dramas and traumas in our careers. Um, Everything from when a story starts with "get a load of this," then there's a punchline that you probably won't believe, or the chair throwing scenarios in a board meeting or otherwise. Um, and what we go through, where we started, what we go through dictates where we are now in specific points in our career. And there's a lot of people that might be listening to this that could be very, very early stage, could be mid career, or could be at the point where they need to engage with someone to say, what do I want to do when I grow up? I've gotten so much success, but I'm still not happy. Walk us through an example of where you were in the middle of doing what you were doing and trying to figure something out, trying to figure out you've got A, B, C, and D, and you know it's right. Why isn't it working? Right. And then what did you learn from any scenario like that? By the way, I did not prompt him on this at all. So he's got to think on the fly of a
No, he
story.
did not. He did not. Absolutely not. And by the way, Mel, I envy your background. Totally envy your background. One day when I'm big, I will have the same.
Nice, nice.
Kidding aside. Okay. You see, what really came to mind was you talked about drama and trauma. My last corporate position was when I was a senior vice president and a managing director of an outplacement company, which was owned by a private equity company in the US. No small thing. And that's when I found myself at the pinnacle of my career in corporate. And I realized and experienced how quickly this thing can actually evaporate an illusion and how hard it is to land at reality. And a friend of mine just pointed out a couple of days ago, Marcus, there is still some betrayal going on in you as a residue in terms of emotions. And he's absolutely right. So I'm working through that myself at the moment. So what happened was, picture this. We had a CEO in Switzerland. He was very much connected to the private equity company. I cannot go into more details like that than that. And next to two of my colleagues, I was invited as a representative of my area and bring along one of my star employees. So I did. I went to that city, and I knew that the world international CEO will show up. And I traveled there with my wife as well. It was in Geneva. And when I got there, I had this hunch up here to ask my boss the question, how much does your boss know about me? So he looked at me and said, what do you mean? And I said, exactly what I asked. How much does he know about me? And he literally said, Marcus, nothing. So I figured that I have built a corporate career based on a ruse. We have built literally a successful organization without the mother company knowing anything about it. And the one who took all the laurel eyes was my boss. So, I could have been absolutely pissed. And to be honest, I was in the very first moment. But then I realized if that actually is possible at that level where I'm working at, how much more do actually other leaders suffer under their bosses simply because they are not being given the credentials or laurel eyes or whatever you want to talk about it, simply because they do not understand, as long as you incorporate, it's the prerogative of your boss to actually go away with your laurel eyes. And that's when I decided to leave corporate. We went on a sabbatical, which lasted a year in the end. And during that year, I wrote my concept, which was called short circuiting paralysis at that time. So the biggest downfall followed after the biggest climb, and the biggest downfall in the end led to an absolute blessing in disguise. So I believe this is definitely the turning point of my career now.
I appreciate and I relate with that. Uh,
Probably many can.
as as a as a as a pivotal point, we don't ask for a lot, right? We appreciate our paychecks, the team, the
Yes.
resources that we're given, and we don't really ask for a lot, right? We're not asking for a 7-digit bonus. Maybe some of us are. Maybe some of us are still dreaming, right? We're not asking to be exalted to the highest mountains. A lot of times it's just simple recognition and respect. And I say respect is one of the biggest pieces. So, in a scenario like you just identified, the lack of respect in saying, Marcus, the team, and the efforts that I should communicate up. By the way, you may want to you get to know Marcus. He's been doing incredible work for us. And I get there's different cultural components around how people get introduced, and there's different hierarchies and processes and everything else. But that level of respect or that level of responsibility as a leader, it's not always there. And when you give portions of your life above and beyond to success, where you think you are just, and that question cuts deep. How much do they know about me? Nothing.
You know what he knew? What he knew about me? He was introduced to me as a sales consultant. So I had to leave my boss's office. Within 5 minutes, I walked to my employee and I said, Steph, fortunately, I know your clients really, really well. This one and this one and this one and this one are my accounts because I will have to justify my ass to the boss's boss who believes I am like you. It was the most humiliating experience I ever had, Coach Mel.
Right.
Most
Right.
humiliating experience.
Right.
And I was so close to throw my boss under the wagon, but I
Right.
decided it's not worth it. And I actually had an entire morning with him after that, my boss, because I
Right.
talked to him and I said, look, we need to talk. And
Right.
that led me to leave the company in the end.
Right. Right. And
And I know many can relate to
sometimes
this
it's
plus.
yeah, and sometimes it's those type of scenarios that we'd either just accept and then we demoralize, we crush our egos, we forget about all of our accomplishments, and we just stay in the cog. And we like, you know what? I have consistency, I have stability. Why am I even trying to do bigger and better and for myself or for my family? Then there's times where it's a slap in the back of the head, the front of the head, the side of the head, and say, why am I still doing this? Why am I not doing better for myself? And I think that's where you landed with there's and again, respect is a massive, massive, massive thing. All right. That the level of integrity that you need in order to show, for example, if I were your boss, I would absolutely be giving you credit. I would absolutely not take it all on myself, right? But guess what? I hired you and I manage you, so you're making me look good. But I have to give you credit, right? As a leader,
It
right?
helps. Mhm.
And it absolutely helps. I guarantee you'll be more productive and you'd be producing even better, right? And we know the metrics, we know the level of encouragement and the kind of leadership that can do that. So kudos to you for recognizing when the camel, that last straw broke the camel's back. And obviously I kind of ankled into frameworks, right? But we don't have to get deep into those. But our experiences guide us to say, what's the rinse and repeat? And you alluded to this with things I keep seeing, right? And I have the same theories. That's why I was like, coach the coach, we got to do this, right? Without getting deep into the actuals, walk us through what you started to feel and what you started to see that you were throughout your career that you then created. And it was funny you said I wrote something. I was like, did you write a manifesto? Because that's very different than
I did. I did. And that actually became a methodology in the end. Yes.
Right, right. Yeah. There's a very clear distinction between a methodology and a manifesto. I just want to make sure you're not,
Oh,
going off the
yes.
rails, right? Okay.
No, 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 no. No, no, I know. I usually write manifesto, which is therapeutic, and then other people recognize it as a manifesto. It's really interesting.
Yes, yes. There's a, here in the States, it's not necessarily a positive a view when somebody says they wrote a manifesto. So we'll walk that one back later, but walk us through a couple of examples of where you're like, I kept seeing this. And this is why I now focus on this in one of my methodologies or frameworks.
You see, what really comes to mind, it's another pivotal moment, Mel. Picture this. I was in charge of expats in Switzerland. So they came from all around the world, and quite a few came from the US, as you can imagine, because they had headquarters in Switzerland, the international headquarters. And they were let go or fired, depends on the circumstances. And I always wondered, like, how can people be treated like that? The beauty was, they've been given like 20 or 60K to hire someone like me as their career coach. But at the same time, they came to me, and one question I always asked them was, is this as good as it gets, what you had so far, or is there more for you? And you know what really happened is, Mel, over time, what started like a wee little voice in my head, because as you can imagine, if I uttered these words, it has a resonance on yourself. So this wee little voice became louder and louder and louder. And in the end, it turned out like a bullhorn in my head. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I literally sat there one day and I said to myself, Marcus, this can't be it, because the it means we are actually being treated worse than most of my clients who come into my office and need help. So that's when I understood leadership has to be different. And I knew that I'll be much, much of more help to people in this world when I leave corporate and I actually go solo, which I looked at as a much easier thing than it became and turned out to be in the end, to be honest. But in hindsight, it was the absolute best decision to leave that job, which was a cushiony job with a nice bonus. I was one of those six-figure bonuses. And my friends asked me, like, how could you leave that job? And I said, because I knew there is more. And in order to get to the more, I had to leave the old. I know you can very much relate to that.
I will wholeheartedly support that comment. Right. Um,
It's not
and
easy.
it's not. If it was easy, it'd be called a vacation,
Yeah.
right?
And everyone will do it.
Right. And that's why I appreciate all the conversations we've had up to today, right? Because we have to put ourselves where we want to be.
Right.
And when you come to the realization that you thought that's where you wanted to be, but in reality, there's a whole nother layer, a whole nother level, right? And we talked about what my goal was in the last couple of years, right? Next level, right?
Hmm.
I don't know what that is yet, but I have a clear view of what I
Hmm.
want.
Hmm.
And it's so next level. Right? I talk about intergalactic world domination, right? And so I appreciate that, right? Is that realization, and even more importantly, which I actually put in the comment when you said challenge accepted, I said acceptance is one of the first and best leadership qualities, right? Knowing when you have to make really hard decisions, not for the team or for the company, but for yourself,
Correct.
right? And that could cascade into a company if you stay there, or could cascade into your team. But a lot of times when we do that over and over and over again, we forget about ourselves
Hmm. Hmm.
and we become that. And some people stay there and they're happy there, and that's okay. But when you're treating your clients better than you're being treated, like you said, to paraphrase what you just said,
Hmm.
when does that end? Uh,
Hmm.
I appreciate that
Well, let
tremendously.
me add something to that, Mel, which I believe is very pivotal. I am eternally grateful to my boss, and I'm eternally grateful to the boss's boss because I don't believe I would have had the courage to leave my salary and my bonus behind. And I say, I embark on a journey which is absolutely insecure. I have no assurance that it will work. So I really deeply, deeply, deeply believe that those two people were so influential that they probably even were sent by the universe as my teachers and my guides. Because you can tell there's still a lot of emotions and still about betrayal, but that betrayal only has residues because it really moved away and made room for saying to these two guys, thank you for serving me, because I wouldn't be where I am and I wouldn't be who I am today. So I just wanted to add that.
That's beautiful. And I did similar across my whole career, right? When I had to make hard decisions, right, to some of the leadership that were really, really invested in me, right? Maybe the company wasn't, but the my immediate leader was. And I will tell you, there's times where I cried leaving jobs, but I had to, right? I cried leaving teams that I had made such an investment in. And what I appreciate is that we all should leave at a professional level with the courtesy to say, listen, I wouldn't have learned what I learned, done what I've done, good or bad, right? And been where I'm at had it not been for your life lessons. I've got some incredible leaders, and I still go back to some of my first jobs, literally first jobs while I'm in college, and I still remember the impact that some of those leaders had on me. Right? They didn't know it,
Beautiful.
but there were certain things that I was clueless about
Hmm.
that I learned by watching them, right? But I
Hmm.
also learned what not to do by watching a lot of leaders. Right. So for me, I think this is the kind of direction that I hope every leader can look at, or every person who is in a buffer where
Mhm.
there's a nebulous that they don't know what they're navigating to make sometimes very hard decisions. Right? Not
Mhm.
easy, or it'd be called a vacation.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so it's interesting. Perfect segue into one of the topics that I did want to talk about because you use very specific language and very specific pieces in your profile and conversations we've had about dismantling
Mm.
beliefs. I call it unshackling. I call it unleash the kraken. I call it that freedom of knowing what's holding you back to why you aren't at that next level. Walk us through a journey or a path or a story where you've kind of came to the realization or you helped a client get through something like that.
Let me start with myself first and then share with you what it actually turned into for my then future clients and now current and past clients. So let me start with the following preamble. When I started my LinkedIn journey, I was one of those Teflon consultants who was able to portray myself in a very good light, to put it this way. Apparently, I had all the answers. People were able to turn to me, and I was able to help them. And then one guy came and said, Marcus, what are you doing? Because he said, look, this is not what people who need you should read because they don't actually resonate and they don't recognize themselves in it. So that's when I decided to put away the Teflon consultant coach BS and start showing who I really am. So I went on a authenticity building journey, which to be honest, I'm glad I did not know what I was walking into because it is a quest. You do not know what actually waits you. So what is interesting, um, I had a burnout through COVID, as probably many, many people. So it's a depression, nothing else than a depression. And I thought I'm just one of many because, many in my environment were depressed. And I didn't get it, Mel, until I came out of the burnout, which was 18 months later. And I was about to stop my public work, meaning stop posting on LinkedIn, giving talks, giving interviews, going on podcasts, because I actually asked myself, why? What do I have to give? I believe anyone who has ever been in a depressed state knows exactly what this means. And at the level I work with my clients, they usually are absolutely left alone. Absolutely left alone. They can't share with anyone. They can't reveal anything because if they would, cutthroat. So what happened was, picture this. I was sitting on my terrace in a two-seater swing chair, and I pondered with AI what would be the 10 topics I could write about because she convinced me I should write. So number 7 immediately hit my eye, imposter syndrome. So I started writing about imposter syndrome and I received feedback. It was amazing to see how people resonated with that topic. And then two of my friends reached out to me and said, Marcus, I resonate with the symptoms, but not with imposter syndrome. And to be honest, coming from those two friends, I knew I'm onto something now. So I started digging deep and I realized, okay, I am right now experiencing imposter syndrome in terms of the symptoms. So let me dive deeper into why do these esteemed gentlemen don't resonate with imposter syndrome. And they were not foolish. They were not aloof. They were not ignorant. So I knew there must be something deeper which I haven't touched upon yet. So then I sat down and I asked the universe, explain to me what's going on with this imposter syndrome that actually triggers that conundrum with one group and the other group. So I suddenly realized imposter syndrome is actually a compliment by life. And what this means, Mel, you hit You know this membrane which separates the space and the atmosphere? So we have our little rocket ship every single day when we tackle something new, and we go up and up and up, and suddenly we come close to the sun, and then we shrink, and then we go down again. And we go up, we shrink, and we go down again. And it's no coincidence. We do never go as high up as we did the first time because we never want to get burned close to the sun. And then suddenly the universe told me, Marcus, what's really going on is imposter syndrome kicks in then when something is absolutely worth the while. And then I saw it. It's about trusting that you have what it takes so you can go through this membrane. And once you are in space, everything releases and you're free. So I started running with the thought. And the conclusion I came to was imposter syndrome itself is the biggest problem. Believe me, guys, if you are being told that you have an imposter syndrome, you are simply cooked. You will never get free of it. Because a syndrome is nothing else than something you cannot explain, put together, and this becomes a syndrome. So if you're diagnosed with a syndrome, good luck. So that's when I thought, stop. What if imposter syndrome is actually a pseudo thing? What if it's actually a consequence of something so much more great? And you'll be shocked when I tell you what it is, Mel. It is an authenticity struggle. That means I do not know who I am. I had a conversation this morning with a dear friend, and I said to him, look, we are both above 50 years old. And it takes guts to admit at our level, no, we do not know who we are. We do not know what the fabric of our personality is. We do not know what brought us here. We do not know why we take decisions as we take decisions. So there is an automatic distrust to anything we hope and believe and think. Because you see, let me give you an example, Mel. I call you up and I shared with you on the last phone call the thing. I call you up and I say, Mel, I just happened to walk into one of the mountaineers on the Mount Everest, and he promised us to take us to the base camp on Mount Everest, help us to acclimate, and then maybe even take us higher. And your first reaction was, Marcus, if it's coming from you and it's a trusted source, of course I would trust. But then I told you the same thing. Last night I went to a bar, had few glasses too much, and someone came in and said, Marcus, well, let me take you to the Mount Everest. And you would say, I don't know what you drank, Marcus.
Oh no.
Never, ever. So guess what, Mel? That's exactly what happens. We are drunk all the time. And when something really
Wow.
challenging happens, we cannot trust that drunk. So
Right.
what I realized is it is an authenticity struggle. And people tell me, but Marcus, I'm authentic. I said, yes. And you are authentic about what you know about yourself. But believe me, it is 98% you have no bloody clue who you are and why.
Right.
And that's when my clients click and say, tell me more. Because you see, the antithesis of an authenticity struggle, which actually is the source of the so-called imposter syndrome, is authentic confidence. So the more you get to know yourself, the more you get to understand yourself, the more you get mirrored from many, many different directions, the more you become authentic. And the more authentic you become, the more confidence arises in you, right? So
Amen.
this was the biggest belief buster, and you know how you call it, how do you call it, the influence, the imposter syndrome. debunk imposter syndrome. So that was the biggest aha moment for me when I debunked that belief. And I realized, gosh, all I need to do is I need to embark on that quest to get to know Marcus Newcomb. And that's what I've done. And that's how we ended here on your show.
That's that's now everybody knows why I wanted him on, because he mirrored exactly. We came from two different worlds, but the process and the realization was exactly the same. Right? 10 years ago, I know I'm doing everything right. I know that I should be leveling up, and that, but for some reason, I kept anchoring myself. Right? And it was, everybody talks about limiting beliefs, and my theory with the standard phrase, uh, um, fake it till you make it. I'm like, no, 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 no. You don't have to fake it till you make it. Do it till you prove it. Right? And because what we don't have, and you said it so eloquently, is a level of confidence in what we know what to do and how to do it. Right. But we also don't have is advocates and allies who are giving us the reinforcements and reminding us of the things we know how to do when we've been successful, because we forget the positive. We forget all the positive. All we remember is all of the negative things that have happened in our career. I didn't get the promotion. I didn't get that sale. I couldn't get that job. I'm on my 100th interview, right? But what about the things you did accomplish? And so I flipped the script on people, and you said a couple of beautiful words, mirror. I think this is the other reason why I had to have you here, because I tell people, you look in a mirror and you see a certain thing. Maybe I need to shave. Maybe, I'm kind of tired. God, the stress is killing me. And then some people start talking to me and they start spewing the things that they've accomplished or they've done. And I was like, can I just paraphrase what I just heard? And then I hold my mirror that I see, and I said, this is who I see. And all of a sudden, fireworks are shooting out of their head. And they're like, whoa, okay, I guess. Why do I do that? Because somebody helped me through that process. I had a few mentors, and one of them just kept saying, Mel, you've already done that work. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, I look at hundreds of executive resumes, and they all have the same thing that you have, except they have the title. I'm like, okay. And they're like, well, guess what? You've done the work. So stop trying to fight to figure out why you haven't gotten to that level, and accept the fact that you're already doing the work at that level. Once that realization was chiseled into me, thank you, and you know who you are, right? And then I started to receive and accept it. Woo! Sir, universe became my oyster. And the most important thing that you highlighted is whatever level you're at, you don't know what you don't know. Right? So why is this like this? Why haven't I done this? Why am I not happier? Why am I not looking after myself? Well, guess what? Have you asked enough people? Have you been open enough with enough people? Have you tried at least one conversation to say, hey, Marcus, how did you do that? How did you overcome this? Hey, Marcus, right? But when we don't ask and we let our egos and our posture and all of the other pieces define us, you're absolutely right. We're not authentic at all. We're what we think we should be, not who or what we are. So when people ask me, Mel, why do you wear white hoodies? Why do you wear these suits? I'm like, because I want to be audaciously authentic to make everybody else feel comfortable in whatever skin they're wearing. Right. And I want to make sure that everyone, that's why I'm so animated. I'm just like, it's okay to use your hands, people. It's okay to curse every now and then. You haven't gotten me to curse yet, which is great. So the kudos to you. But, but that authenticity is not it's such a commodity for some folks that they don't know. It's just you know where you came from. And this is why I talk about the dramas and traumas, right? That foundational piece of what you liked and didn't like about growing up, high school, college, first careers, those define where you are now. And every 5 to 10 years, I'll recycle through my core beliefs and values. And are they still the same? Am I looking at something different, right? They could change, right? Based on your experiences. So you have to keep revisiting that. And you know what? The biggest problem is no one wants to do the introspective work because they think it's a logistical, systematic component that they need to do. Right? I need to get a certification, and I need to do this, and I got to go from VP to SVP to EVP to director to this to the board. We're like, that's cute. Yes, that's a path, but does that really define you? Right? So I love this, sir. Yes. And you talked about breaking through that membrane, and that membrane is what needs to be cleared, right? That fog, and I talked about that nebulous. You're just constantly in this cycle of like, I'm somewhere. Where am I now? I love this. Oof.
Let me ask you a question, Mel. Have you ever seen a lazy person suffering from imposter syndrome?
I almost. I'm gonna leave that one alone. But I
I
I I
have.
have I've seen some lazy people blame things.
Yes. But I tell you one thing, unskilled people, imposter syndrome, not so much. The higher up, and this was the biggest aha moment for me, Coach Mel, when I went through my research. The higher up in the echelon I get, the thinner the air, the narrower the pyramid, the more prevalent imposter syndrome becomes.
Right.
And that's when I have my proof.
Wow.
The more lonely you get, and I'm a sparring partner to my clients, as you know. I am
Hmm.
there in the trenches with them. I'm not a coach who sees people twice a week on a call. And then when I ask, what's going on now, I said, Marcus, I wished I had you yesterday. Say,
Right.
yes, sorry, we have twice a week a call, which is a lot,
Right.
right? Because I realized, gosh, these people need a sparring partner who is there when they need them. That's exactly what it comes down to. And, like we talked about that. My module is basically I schedule 2 sessions a month of half an hour, and that's it. And then people think, gosh, that's it? So, yeah. And it's not for everyone because I
Right.
work with people who understand I can send Marcus a WhatsApp. I can take the phone. I can send him a text at any given moment saying,
Right.
Marcus, I have this client coming up. Can we get on a call? Guess
Right.
what? I work with 5 to 10 clients. You know how empty my calendar usually is. But
Right.
since I am the super connector, I am on way, way more calls than with my clients. But
Yep.
if a message comes in, Marcus, I have this important presentation this afternoon. I need to raise my confidence level. Can we get on a call in half an hour? Guess what? Who's there? It's me.
Yep. Yep.
It's me. Because the higher up they are, the less feedback they receive,
Hmm.
the more prone and prevalent they are to imposter syndrome.
Amen.
Because they have
Amen.
no feedback, they have no mirroring.
Right. Right. I love that. And there's still a dynamic and a dichotomy around being a leader, knowing what you should be doing, and then being a leader who can ask, right? So, and there's a separation. Like, I can't ask anyone, to help me with this, right? Because
And
I'm
often you
supposed to
can't.
know this, right?
Yes, absolutely. Often you can't because when you expose weakness, which not knowing is weakness for many, many organizations, sorry, my French, but you're screwed.
Oh yeah,
That's what
oh
my
yeah,
clients tell me. I could not reveal the slightest bit when we talk in a session. If my employees or if my CXO colleagues would know, I'd be
yeah.
fucked.
And that's an interesting dynamic that, so for example, here in the States, yes, you have that at some of the Fortune 10s, the Fortune 200s, but internationally, it's a cultural component,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Like there's certain countries like you might as well just leave the country if you admit that you're depressed or that you're
Yeah.
that you're stressed or that you may not know how to handle a specific new initiative. You just leave the company because you will be slaughtered by the piranha that are going to take your job,
Yeah.
right?
This is
So
actually an
there's a
interesting thing you just
yeah,
mentioned. Can I just input something? I just had an epiphany. Do you know the ghostwriting factor? So you are the expert and you have a ghostwriter who writes stuff for you. That's
right,
exactly what I am for my clients. I'm the ghostwriter.
yeah.
So they come to me, they practice what I teach, they execute, and of course, everything is their Lorelei. Because
You,
that's the beauty of working with me
you,
and paying me.
you know what I call that? I call that being the whisperer. Right.
Yes, that's exactly what it
If
is.
if you're ever in if you ever done phone support or calls, right? So there are certain systems that'll whisper to you, like your manager or your supervisor, hey, you might want to ask them about this. So I will hop on calls and I'll be like, hey, by the way, I'm going to be off video. But I'm going to be sending you messages like, hey, ask them about this. Hey, I think they just balked there. You might want to renegotiate that term, right? So I'm not actually saying anything, but I can hear and I can see. And what they might not be seeing, because I'm very acutely trying to analyze everything that's going on, right? And the dialogue and the tone and everything. I do a lot of behavioral analysis, right? So I call it the whisper, but you're right, right? And sometimes you just need that whisperer, somebody to say, hey,
Yeah,
when you get to this point, the best approach you might want to take is
right.
this. If it goes
Yeah,
this way, you go that way. If it goes this way, then you go this way. And
yeah,
the kinds of questions to ask. I love that. Absolutely.
yeah. And, it's actually something my dear wife taught me when we met 17 years ago. It's the concept of contingency thinking. And I said to her, honey, you are so negative. Like, why expect the worst? You should expect the best. She said, Marcus, how naive can you be? And she was right. And in the meantime, 17 years later, it has to become probably my absolute number one weapon when I go into the battle of business. Because it really comes down to contingency thinking. What's the freaking worst that can happen? And let's prepare for it.
I
This is
work in
what I do with my
cybersecurity.
clients.
My world is risk and contingency planning and everything else. So you're
Exactly.
preaching to the choir over here. Yeah.
Exactly. And it is the number one thing which so many people don't dare to touch. They say, yes, but superstition. Is that BS superstition? You are screwed with or without superstition. You need
Right.
to have brass tacks conversations. And you really, and I just received a recommendation from a client who said, look, working with Marcus is not for the faint hearted. It's absolutely true. It's
Thank
not.
you. Thank you.
It's not.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. So
And I'm
I was,
proud of it, to be honest.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. No. So we talked about this, accepting that you need help, right? And then getting the right help. That was one, right? But two is, while I call myself a coach, and I'm probably going to get lambasted by everyone who's in the official certification process, I'm an accountability person, right? I can walk you through and get you to motivate yourself to do something, but if I know exactly how to do it, I'm going to walk you through the A, B, C's, and D's, and I'm going to have you implement it how you want, but I'm going to call you out on your bullshit too. Right? I'm going to call you out on all these limiting beliefs and all these other wonderful little ideas that you have, on top of the fact where you talked about the negative component. I walk everybody through this foundational piece, and the first thing I say is, I can guarantee a high proportion of folks who are out there who haven't done any work on themselves, if I ask them what are the 5 worst things that ever happened to you in your career, right off the top of their head, they're just gonna rattle them off. And then I ask them, what are the 5 best things that have happened in your career? What are you most proud of? Most that I've asked that have to take a long pause. Why? Because we live in this world of survival, right? Through genetics,
So
through
sad.
everything else. And we know what's impacted us and what we learn from. We learn from all the negatives of what not to do. That's cute. That's great. How about you
Yeah.
look at yourself and your authentic self of what you have been able to do, and then use that to move forward. And that was the other piece that I always tell folks, and it's very important, is, and you talked about lazy people, which is like a perfect segue into this, is if you're not doing the work, above and beyond what you think you're already doing and already stressed about, then guess what? You're never going to advance. You're never going to get through that membrane,
Oh,
right? So, yes, you
you
have to
get what you
take
put in.
massive action. You have to
Absolutely.
take a different approach. So I love this. I love this because that's why I knew we were hitting on so many of the same frequencies, slightly different words, same frequency, right? So walk us through as we're coming in here. So you've got clients, you've got specific frameworks, you've got ideas. What's next for Marcus? What stage are we going to see Marcus on next?
This is such a pivotal question. I did an analysis of my career this morning, Mel, and there was one thing which was very evident. I was invited and I accepted. I was invited and I was accepted. And right now, I can tell from all the people that converge around me that a new step in energy is taking place. It's a raising of energy taking place right now. Because now I believe I have reached a level where I can not only teach what I do, but now I believe the time has come where I help those high achievers who are already at the echelon of what they're doing to raise their energy into what I call, and this is the most important thing, future defining leaders.
Mm.
And I cannot tell you where that came from. It came from one introduction, and that person knows who he is, introduced me to people where I feel it's where the sluices of heaven, I don't want to call about gates of heaven, it's sluices of heaven started opening. Because I know I am called to go where the power center is, to help those people at the power center. Because, when I look at the society in the US, in Europe, society somehow doesn't seem to be able to help itself anymore. That's the only conclusion I have about the current situation. So we need to be able to infiltrate the people in power centers, because when they are infiltrated, when they actually go beyond high achievers, which is having, and more having, into, and that's the beauty. When I meet someone I know, there is either a silent voice or a loud bullhorn saying, Mel, is this it? Or is there more to my life? Can it be that there is more? So I am totally cold right now to the power centers. This can be, I just mentioned one thing. It could be at a tech center. It could be at an island of a billionaire where he summons his people, because I just believe the power centers, the one to one is nice, but I believe my message has to go out. So you will find me on stages, probably in the near future on TEDx stages.
Right.
And I said to a friend of mine recently, because we spoke about World Economic Forum, and I see this as a step somewhere. But where I really will end, this is just like a vision. Before I leave this earth, I want to speak at United Nations, because then I will have the recognition that they understood you have to move from a high achiever, which is sweet, which is nice. We all recognize each other when we are a high
Yeah.
achiever, but there is more. There's this transcendence, which we spoke about, remember? That's what it comes down to. But
I
it's
was
not
waiting
about
for it.
me anymore. It's about, people tell me, what kind of a legacy do you want to leave? Leave. And I say, honestly, I don't give crap about leaving a legacy at first. I want to live, live, my legacy while I'm still here.
Yes.
Then what I leave behind can be my legacy forever. But
Right.
it's about living your legacy while you're young, while you're vibrant, you know? That's what it's about. And this is my job, I know, because I meet now people who have access to those power centers, who are absolutely taken in by this idea of elevating high achievers into future defining leaders. Because honestly, change has to come.
Thank you.
We cannot continue as we
Thank
continue
you.
right now.
Thank you.
Definitely. So
And
thank you for
I,
giving me the
I, I love
stage.
that. And you know, I love that. And you know, this is as we were going through the conversation, that initial conversation, you talked about the future defining leaders and being creators, right? We
Yes.
have to
Yes.
create the visibility. We have to create that next product. We have to create that transcendence, right? I've got the pyramid
Yes.
scheme, and I was like, what's above that vision? What's above those goals and the haves? You know, I have this, I have this, I have this. What's above that? It's that transcendence, right? And it is about, and I love the fact that, because you didn't bring this one up, I love about living your legacy now, right? Having the impact now, seeing the impact that you're having on people's lives now, not having to wait as you're in
No,
some other nebulous to look down on it, right?
exactly.
Live it now. Woo!
Yeah.
Damn,
And
sir,
the
that
other
was
thing is,
strong.
when I figured that what I'm really doing is, and it came through endless calls, especially with these kind of people I just mentioned before. And I figured what I'm doing, but especially who I am, is an orchestrator of influence. So what is actually happening is I'm taking people from many different power centers and bring them together, because
Yes.
the exponential impact of when real future defining leaders come together. And then it's not just anymore super high value or super high rich people coming together. Then we have
Right,
the super high value, super high rich people who have become future defining leaders. And when
right.
they start to come together, and this is my job, to gather them together.
I love this. I love this. So, just to tie this into some recent happenings, last year I contributed towards a collective book series, and it was on purpose and mindset. It was the Book of
Oh,
Human
good for you.
Empowerment. Just last week, I announced the second chapter in the second book, Trust and Integrity. Coming soon is the last chapter in the last book, and it is
Wonderful.
community and alignment.
That's it.
So I appreciate you for being part of my community, being able to share in your experiences in your community, and how we can align all at every level towards something that is something that you can manifest that's much higher than what we can all do. Because I am also about, you talked about power and energy, and I look at that as I throw everything out into the universe. Some people receive it, some people don't, and I receive anything that's come my way, good, bad, or indifferent. And the universe brought me you, brought a connection, brought a mirror of ideas and energy, and I appreciate you, sir. Any closing words before we close out this 1 hour? By the way, we've been here an hour. It almost feels like we just started. Right? Any closing words?
I believe it all comes down to authenticity, because whoever watches and listens here, the world has enough of bullshit. The world has enough of fakeness. What the world needs is authentic people who dare to say how they feel, how they're doing. Because to be honest, me appearing as who I am today actually liberates other people to be and who they are. So thank you, Mel, for having me on your show.
Now everybody knows why I needed him on. We share in the same final view 100%. Show up, show out, or miss out. It's that simple. And if you're a leader, if you're a wannabe leader, if you're just starting in your career, these are the things you need to focus on. These are the most important things you need to focus on, is how do you build to that trajectory, or how do you break out of the current mold and the current membrane that you're being capped on. Marcus, It's an incredible joy. We're just going to sign off and close it out. I don't have an outro. Thank you for everybody who joined. You've got this on LinkedIn, you've got this on YouTube, and you've got this on my Facebook page. So anybody can go back and listen to this. I appreciate you. Stay blessed, sir. And
It's been
thanks
a
again
great
for
pleasure.
bringing your knowledge and your experience to the table.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Mel.
Thank you, everyone. I will see you at the next interview.